Hey, I tell you what, if you want to try a really remarkable hamburger that's built from the bun up, a gourmet burger unlike any other burger you've ever had, well, I tell you what, you need to watch this show because it's going to show you how to make a very special hamburger. Oh, man. Wait till you try this. Hello. Welcome back to Texas Cooking Today. On this episode of Texas Cooking Today, we're going to be making a gourmet hamburger. Now, what is there to do with a gourmet burger? I mean, you've got a bun and you've got a patty, some vegetables and condiments. I mean, come on. What is there to do with a hamburger to make it gourmet? Well, I'll tell you what. Normally you see a whole bunch of ingredients sitting next to me. But today I decided we're going to do it a little bit different. I'm going to be making a special patty. It's going to be made out of steak. I'm going to be making a special bun. It's going to be flavored with cheese and herbs. From there, we're going to make a special dressing to go with it, a nice Dijonnaise. We're going to turn a normal hamburger into a gourmet treat, unlike anything you've ever seen. So stay tuned on this one. Keep watching, because what's going to happen right down here is absolutely going to blow your mind. Alright, so let's get right on to the show. Gourmet hamburgers. I have just now come in from the garden after harvesting some fresh basil. And what we're going to do is we're going to use this as the herb in our dough. Our buns need to have some real robust flavor if we want them to be a good gourmet bun. So that's exactly what I'm going to give them here. And no better way than basil. It is a sweet flavor. It's not too overwhelming. And it works well in bread. And of course here I have some beautiful fresh basil. If you get a chance to use fresh, even from your market, that's the way to go. And if you're fortunate enough to have it in your garden, then you already know how wonderful that is. So go and get some and let's do some bread. Now in addition to this, we're also going to be grating up some cheese for that same bread. And I wanted to first show you how to do a nice chiffonade on these leaves. Now, first thing I want to do is just start stacking my leaves. And you don't have to be neat or pretty about this. You just want to get all of them on there. Just try to get the small ones down in the middle as much as possible. In here. That way they can be contained by the larger leaves. And it's a lot easier to work in. You notice I'm not being, like I said, terribly pretty with this. We're just kind of stacking them up willy-nilly as quick as possible. Now, I want to take this nice little stack, and I want to roll it, and then I'm going to curve my fingers under, and we're going to do what's called a chiffonade. And that's where, that's where you form this shape right here on top of the vegetables, and that's with your fingers curved under and this part of the knuckle straight up and down and the thumb behind the fingers, and the thumb actually helps to control the vegetable, and you just slowly kind of crawl your fingers back like this as you're cutting a chiffonade. And then the knife itself, the side of the knife, is going to glide up and down on that knuckle, so you have that simple thing going on right there. Okay, now to do this cutting, we're going to take these and first roll them nice and tight. I'm going to get over on top of it with my knuckles. And if you'll notice, my motion isn't up and down, but it's like this. And this gives me more of a slicing motion through the herb. And when I get a slicing motion, I have less probability of bruising that herb because I'm cutting it gently. See how I can just barely let it rub against the side of the vegetable, and it's cutting these beautiful thin strips. And this is called a chiffonade. And I'm going to need about 1/4 to 1/2 cup of chopped basil here, and I think I've got at least that or more. So I'm going to take the rest of that and just kind of put it aside. And I'm going to rock my knife. This is a chopping motion, and we're getting a little bruising here. But it's mostly just cross-cutting, and so it's not a big deal. our vegetable is good and whole and firm. And that's exactly what we want right there. Just a nice, fine, chopped chiffonade for our bread. And some of these strands are a little wider than others. That's not going to really matter. It just gives it good interest, okay? Now that that's done, let's move right on to taking care of the cheese that we're going to need. We're going to be using a Parmesan cheese. Remember your cutting board color codes. When you're working with cheese or anything that's going to be bakery or dairy, then you're going to put that on your white board. Anything that you're going to cut up that's vegetables or fruit or that which grows out of the ground, that hits that green board. That way we don't have to worry about cross-contamination, one ingredient from another, and people are a little bit more safe in the kitchen. Later we'll be using the red board for the meat, because I have two different kinds of steak. We're going to be using a ribeye steak, and we're going to be using some sirloin steak, and that's going to make it wonderful. Here I probably have a little bit more cheese than I need, but that's going to be okay. I only need about a half to 3/4 of a cup, and I got about a cup there. So we have enough cheese. We have our basil ready. Let's go around here and make, let's make us some bread, our buns. It looks like it's time for us to get these buns underway. Now, what I'm going to do, because I have some salt here that is a real coarse grain, this is actually kosher salt, I'm going to put that in a mortar and pestle, and so that I can, a mortar and pestle, so that I can go ahead and grind it down to a finer consistency. This is going to allow the salt to disperse better in the dough. There we go. Now it's just a finer grain, and that way it'll spread out a little bit better in the dough. It'll more readily provide flavor. Now here in my mixing bowl I already have 2½ cups of flour. And to this 2½ cups of flour we're going to be adding 1 cup of hot water, 2 teaspoons of salt, 2 teaspoons of sugar, 2 teaspoons of fast-acting yeast. And if you don't have this in bulk, just open 1 packet. That'll be 2¼ teaspoons, and it'll work just perfect for you. And of course our water I don't have filled yet because I want it to be good and fresh and hot. But the first thing I wanted to do was to combine these ingredients and let y'all see, about how to do this the right way. First thing I like to do is to put my salt and my sugar right down. There we go, right down in there. And I give that a little bit of a mix with a whisk, and I put my yeast into it. Now you don't have to mix your yeast with water beforehand. That used to be done a long time ago when you would have to proof the yeast to make sure that it was a good yeast, that it was going to rise properly. It would keep you from wasting other ingredients in case you had a bad batch. These days yeast controls are of such that you don't ever seem to get a bad package of yeast unless it's out of date. So as long as your yeast package is in date, you should be fine. Now, next thing I want to need is to go ahead and mix in that basil that we did. Yummy. And also some of the cheese. And I don't want to use it all. Now this is good grated Parmesan cheese here. Don't use the cheap stuff that comes in the shaker can. And the reason you don't want to use that is because it doesn't melt down properly. It's way too dry for this. You want a good Parmesan cheese that you can grate, or that's possibly pre-grated for you. Sometimes you can get those in little tubs. I'm going to go ahead and mix that together. Get that cheese and basil down in the flour. Good. All I need now is to get my dough hook on there, get some water in this, and we're going to be making dough. Now, I'm going to use hot tap water. Slightly over a cup here. I want right at 1 cup of water to that 2½ cups of flour. Now, because making dough is a little hinky when it comes to flour and water combinations, in other words, you can get the exact same measurements on 2 different days of the year and get 2 completely different results. And that's because flour is going to take in water at different rates depending on the crop that was grown, how much moisture it received that year. There's a lot of factors that go into it. So even though you might buy the same brand of flour one time after another, 2 different batches of bread are going to come out different. Now, the reason I tell you that is so you can watch what's going on in here. And if this starts to ball up and look way too dry, then you're going to need to add extra water. And if it looks like it's just sticking all over the bowl and it's not mixing properly, like it's more like a batter, then you might want to add a little bit more flour. We want a sticky batter that sticks to your hands readily and is difficult to work with. And this is just perfect for this kind of bread because it makes it light and fluffy and airy inside, and it is going to make a very good flavor. There is one more item that I have to put into this. This is an important item. It's your olive oil. Whenever you're going to make this type of a bun, you want to put a little oil in here. Now, I'm not putting a little oil in. I'm going to go ahead and put in roughly 1/4 to 1/3 of a cup. There we go. That is going to give a moist texture and some suppleness to this bread. It'll also help it to remain moist for days after it's made. Now, we'll just let that mix. When it's ready, we're going to be lightening it up. Okay, that's all it needs. Now, I'm going to transfer this. There we go, since I get the hook off of there. Take that dough off. You can use your fingers for this also, but remember it's going to have a tendency to stick a little bit, so just be prepared. It's sticking to everything else, why wouldn't it stick to you too? Now, I want to move this over to my other board and we'll get it put in a separate bowl for rising. Now I'm transferring my dough, and if you'll notice what I'm using here is a glass bowl, and this is quite on purpose. It is important when you're rising your dough to use a glass bowl, and that is because yeast has a tendency to not react well when it's in contact with metal. So if you're using a metal bowl, it's going to be not a good thing because it has a tendency to, well, dampen yeast spirits, you might say. It will not rise properly when in contact with metal. So all of the dough that's on the bottom in contact with the metal bowl doesn't rise properly while the upper part does, and you get an uneven rise. Use the glass, that doesn't happen, and I'm going to use another bowl, and we're going to cover it. And what I'm going to do, I have these nice ramekins. These are going to be the mold for our buns. You don't have to use a mold for your buns, but it really does help in this particular case. I'm going to take another bowl, invert it on top, and leave it on top of a pilot so it stays good and warm. Just put it in a warm place. That's going to take about an hour per rise. So we're looking at 3 hours to get this ready. 2 rises in this bowl, 1 rise in the dish or on the sheet for making the buns, and then it'll be cooked. So that's about 3 hours worth. In that time, though, it's going to give you plenty of time to grind up your meat and everything else that we need to get ready for this. If you don't have a meat grinder, don't stop the video now. I'll tell you how you can take care of getting it ground special for you. Well, we're back. The dough has risen. This has been 1 hour, actually about 1 hour and 5 minutes. And look at how much it's risen up. Look how soft and spongy it is, and look how it contracts the minute I touch it. Okay, see how very moody it is? Well, I'm going to use a silicone spatula, kind of break it loose. Now, some of that stickiness is now a little bit more under control, but don't underestimate it. It's still quite sticky. What I'm doing here is just kind of mixing it around, basically kneading it. But if you'll notice, like I said, sticky. And that's precisely what you're looking for. It is a really, really good quality for this type of dough. And if you have it really sticky like this, once you go to rising it up the last time and you put it in the oven, it's going to rise up and get really puffy, and that softness remains that way in the oven. And so you end up with something just really cool on the texture. on the appearance of the bread, the flavor, everything is enhanced by that. So, wonderful flavor. I'm sitting here smelling this and oh God, it's just driving me up a wall. Making bread is a beautiful smell. Alright, let's take our buns, get them ready. Now, if you'll notice, our dough has risen even more than last time. And if you'll look at the pores, the large holes. This is exactly the kind of appearance that we're going to get inside of these once they're cooked up. And that's the reason we made it the way we made it, was to get this kind of wonderful structure in the bread itself. So when we're rising up our dough, what we're doing is just getting air down inside of it in such a way that even though I'm breaking a lot of larger bubbles right now, there is a lot of carbon dioxide that's now incorporated in the dough itself. And what I'm going to do here, I'm going to turn on my scale, and I've got this set for my metric. We've got it set for kilograms. We're going to measure exactly how much of this dough I have. And the reason I'm doing this is just to make it a little easier for me to proportion it out into 6 even portions. That way my buns simply come out really even in their size. Okay, I have 742 grams. And what I'm going to do here is use my calculator, because I'm not that good with math. And I'm going to divide that by my 6 ramekins, and that gives me 123.6 grams. So what I'm really looking for here is about 123 grams per ramekin. That makes that really simple. Now, what I'm going to have to do, I'm going to zero this again for my new bowl. I need to place some olive oil, and I want, just about a half a teaspoon in each one at the very most. So I'm putting just a tiny bit in each one, just a drop more in that one. And I want to take these, and I'm going to use my fingers to coat it. Rub that right into my other hand. I'll reach right into my dough. We'll pull out a big clump. You see how it's still sticking, but the oil keeps it from sticking as bad. 93, 128, tiny pinch out of it, 122, 123, look at that. Now, take that and I'll just form it into a simple ball. Even though it's kind of weird to work with and mushy, it'll still work. So just roll it like this into a ball and place that ball to the bottom of one of those dishes, and it'll rise up beautifully. And I want to keep doing this, just one right after another, and getting some olive oil on there. Facilitate a little easier handling. That's all that is. Right now I'm just trying to get what's left in the bowl. This one I think is going to be perfect, 126. Hey! And any olive oil that's on my hand that gets on the outside of this is just that much better. And that's what I'm really wanting, because in the end, we're going to brush the top of these with just yet a little more olive oil. Now that our ramekins have been filled, go ahead, transfer them to this sheet. And I'll tell you what, if you do not have ramekins to cook this in, and you're sitting there thinking, geez, I wish you would have come up with something different, you can take that same ball of dough that I did and just roll it up and place it on the sheet. Now I would recommend also kneading it first with a little extra flour, and that extra flour will allow it to be a little less sticky, but it also won't spread outward quite as fast with it. So we'll decrease the hydration level, you'll increase your rising time, and when they're risen up, they won't have the shape of this dish. However, they'll have sort of a dome shape, and that can be cut in half for a beautiful hamburger bun. So you've got either way of doing this. Make sure if you're doing it that way that you coat the sheet that you're going to be cooking them on in olive oil, the same way we put olive oil in these little dishes here. And that's part of the flavor of it as well. Now, let's take some plastic wrap. I have some sitting out over here, just for this wonderful little purpose. Very gently over the top. And I want this over it just so we can trap in any moisture and they won't dry out on top. Keeping it good and moist on top of that bread will really give it a nice texture. Once they're risen, most of the way, not all of the way, we're going to brush them with a little olive oil and rise them to just a little bit more, and then we'll bake them up. And those will be baked at about 375 to 400 degrees. Okay, it's time for us to take care of making some ground beef for this. Now, in the event that you do not have a meat grinder, you can ask the butcher at your grocery store to provide you with a grind that is equal or similar to that which I'm doing here. You can use a New York strip or a prime rib, and in this case I'm using a prime rib for its additional fat to give us more flavor. And I'm also using top sirloin. So this is going to be a mixture of top sirloin and prime rib, and these are both choice cuts, so they're already very tender cuts of meat. Now all I'm going to do is just break these down just a little bit so that they can be used a little bit more easily. Since I'm going to be putting this through my grinder, I want to make strips that will easily fit down inside of it. Now, you can get a hand grinder. They don't cost very much. They mount right on the side of your counter. I'm using one that attaches as an attachment to my mixer, which is a really wonderful way of doing this. If you've got a mixer, I sure recommend that you consider an attachment for it for this purpose, if it's the type of mixer that has such. There we go. Now if you notice, I'm not being any too neat about this and none too selective. I'm saving every little bit of the meat. Now look at the difference in the color and the grain on that over the sirloin. And it's what it gives you that wonderful steak flavor right down in this meat, and this gives you that deep, rich, beefy flavor that's real common from sirloin. So we have two wonderful flavors that we're mixing together, and then we're going to add some spices, and I also have some additional fat to add into this, and that of course just to make it a little bit more moist. Now what I want to do is take both of these piles of meat and just start grinding. So I'm going to turn on my machine real quick and start feeding it in one piece at a time. It's still pushing a little out, so I'm going to give it a moment. Okay, there's my grind. Now I'm going to take my meat and I'm going to spread it out. The reason I'm doing this is so I can get a good even seasoning across it. And I have several seasonings here: paprika, salt, garlic, and onion powder. Just a little easier to get to. Looks like I got a little meat in my salt. It's alright, salt's a preservative. It's not going to hurt it one bit. So we'll start with it. Give my meat a good salting. Right here it's kind of thick on the salt, so I want to spread that out a bit so it doesn't have a spot in the beef that's too salty. Now I'm going to also use some paprika. This gives it a nice warm tone. A wonderful tone. Few people will be able to pick out the flavor, but they'll just think it has a really nice warmth and depth to it. And here I have some garlic powder, and very lightly I want to sprinkle this over the top. I don't want to use too much of it because it can really overwhelm. And the same way with the onion powder, we're going to go light on that. There we are. And one last thing. I mentioned that I'll be adding some lard. Yes, you heard me, lard, extra fat. This is some pig fat is what it is. But it has a good flavor to it. And the advantage in this case, what it's going to do for me is it's going to allow a meat that already didn't have enough fat in it, mostly because we did a grind from sirloin, which A, didn't have a lot of fat, and then there wasn't enough fat in that ribeye to compensate, because what I did was 1 pound of ribeye to 1.5 pounds of sirloin, and gives me a good compensation in flavor. Unfortunately, there's just not enough fat breakdown going on in it. So what I'm going to do is just take this and daub it down over the meat, all over the place. And as you see, I'm not being too easy or pretty about it. Just take it and knead it just like if it was dough. Squeeze it through your fingers. That way you get all the ingredients mixed them together just the right way. And from here, all I'm going to have to do is just roll this up into some balls that can be mashed out into patties. And there is a neat way of doing that. It helps to orient the grain of the meat. I'm going to show you that. Now I'm going to grab out a lump of meat, and I want to give you some ideas of what you're looking at here. If you get a piece of meat that's the size of a handball, about that big around, then it's going to give you about a 1/4 pounder. If you get a piece of meat that's just about the size of a baseball, get it here, like this, then you're looking at a 1/2 pounder, okay? If you get one that's about the size of a racquetball, and that's what I like, you're looking at roughly 1/3 of a pound of beef. See, there's the size of a racquetball. Now, 1/3 of a pound, what I want to do here is, you notice I'm spinning it in my hand. You see how there'll be breaks on the outer edge? Push it in with your thumb as you do that, just like that. See? So I'm doing this and my thumb's pushing in as I go. What that does is it helps to pack and shape that edge, but it also gets the grain of your meat running a certain way. It runs in a spiral, and it helps the shape of the meat. Now there's another little trick also. Meat has a tendency to puff up in the center. So make it a little thinner in the center, just like that, pushing higher on the edges. And by the time it's finished cooking, it'll be a nice flat shape. So, easy enough. I'm going to sit here and make several of these. Alright, there we have them. Plenty of hamburger patties. Actually, more than I'm going to need for this. So, let's move right on. Now I have my bread that has risen up most of the way. Very gently pull this off because it may stick slightly to that plastic. Set it right over to the side here. Now, before these finish rising completely, and they're getting close, I want to go ahead and add some olive oil to the top of these. Now, if you don't have a basting brush, then just take a paper towel and fold it over so all of the edges are in one spot, and then just use the edges and corners to gently rub the olive oil over the top of these. I'm turning my oven on, and I'm turning it on for right about 375 to 400. I set it right about closer to 400 because I like the crispiness that it gives me on the outside. Very gently rub the olive oil over the top of these. And of course I can see olive oil around the edges from where it had pushed it up from the bottom. And that's a really good sign. It's a sign that you're going to make a very, very tasty bread. Now right before I put these in the oven, I want to take some coarse grained salt, sea salt, kosher salt, and gently sprinkle over the top of these just before they go in the oven. And that way they're going to have this wonderful salty seasoning on top of them that's magnificent. So here we have a very special gourmet bun for a very special gourmet burger. If this one doesn't impress your friends, nothing will. Alright, now we have our buns ready to go here. As I mentioned before, a light sprinkle of salt just from above. There we go. And now these are going to go down in our hot oven. And that's going to be about 25 to 30 minutes at 400 degrees. I was wanting to get some onion cut up for the hamburger, and I wanted to give you just a quick run over about what you can do to cut an onion easy and nice and thin. Don't cut into the root end first of all. Let's cut off that stalk end first. And I do this in a very methodical way, a certain way, quite on purpose. And that makes it a lot easier. I want to cut this outer layer of onion off. Take off that. There we go. Now sometimes I will sacrifice part of good onion in order to make sure I don't get any bad. And I think that's pretty much what I did here, but it's not a big deal. I want some very small, thin slices of this. Put this out of the way. Now, on the side of the root, just like so, you want to make a straight cut down. And this is the part I'm going to use right here. In order to make these thin slices, I'm going to be making a chopping cut. Remember, the fingers bent under with the middle knuckle right here, straight up and down so the blade can glide along it. Your thumb on the back of the vegetable. And then there we go, nice and quick. There's no sense in getting messy with it. I just wanted a little bit of onion to go with the burger. And that's going to take care of me. Alright, that's all you have to do. Real simple. I have just now pulled the buns from the oven. These things are really, really hot. Okay, so you want to be super careful. And it is nice to go ahead, if you can, and take them out of their dishes. And all I did there was just turn it over and catch it on the other side. And sometimes I need a little persuasion. You might want to just pull it with your thumb a little bit or your finger on the edge. Sometimes they don't release at all. There we go. Well, there we have it. Despite one little mishap, a little sticking, they're all beautiful. Nice set of 6 buns. I only need 4 though, so I'm all right. Well, I have my meat ready, my vegetables ready. Over here I'm going to be making some French fries. I went ahead and par-fried some potatoes earlier to get them ready just for this. And before I put these on my grill, I just want to season them. I want to go lightly with a little bit of salt. Remember, you got salt in it, so you don't need very much on the outside. You can go about half as much as you normally would on an unseasoned meat. There, put some pepper on this. I like a little pepper on the outside of my patty. Quite good. Alright. Now, flip those over, season the other side, and I'm going to put them on the grill. And I want to tell you one thing about using the grill. I'm going to set mine up with some wood in the back so it smokes, and that way I get a smoky flavor on the meat. But when I put these on the grill, I have preheated it with the cover closed at the highest temperature, and this is of course on a gas grill, and with the wood in the back and the wood producing good smoke. If you like this flavor of charcoal, you can put some charcoal on a pan in the back of it and allow that to smolder the same way wood would. And anyway, so you put your meat down on that, and you want that grate just as fiery hot as you can get it. That's the reason you preheat it on high with the cover closed. It's to make the grate super hot, so that when you put the meat down on there, it's going to sear it. It's going to sear it good and even and clean, and that way the meat doesn't stick, and you get a good, pretty sear line on your meat. But also, real important to know here, when you're cooking meat up this way and you sear it, like I said, it doesn't stick, but if you don't sear it, if that grate isn't hot enough, your meat's likely to stick, and when you go to removing it, it's going to be very difficult to turn that over. Only turn your meat one time on the grill, halfway through cooking. I'll put these on, 5 minutes later I'll turn them, 5 minutes after that they come off of the grill. And the minute I put them on the grill, I lower my temperature down to half flame on my propane type grill, and then cook with the cover closed so I get a smoky flavor on them. Now, I have my grate good and hot. My wood is smoldering. Here. As I mentioned before, if you have a problem with a flare-up, simply move the meat over, but don't turn it over. Turn it over one time only. Then you're good. Halfway 5 minutes. I'll turn my heat down to medium. And now I'm back in with my meat patties. And I need to take one of my buns. Start by getting the slice open. Look at the inside of that, how porous and beautiful it is and light. Excellent, excellent for a hamburger. Now, I prepared earlier a Dijonnaise. And if you wish to make something like this, it's too easy. If you just got mayonnaise and Dijon mustard, use 2 parts of mayonnaise to 1 part mustard. Or to make it simple for you, how about half a cup of mayonnaise to 1/4 cup of Dijon mustard. Spread it gently over that beautiful bun. Right. Now, of course, when you're going to make a really good burger, you need to dress it, not just with some sort of sauce. You're going to need some vegetables on that guy. So, have some nice lettuce. I have radicchio, some onion here. I'm going to slice this guy up, a beautiful little tomato, and also 2 types of cheeses. I've got some extra sharp cheddar, and back here some pepper jack. Now, I need to take this beautiful tomato, just make some nice thin, razor thin slices with it. This is why I tell people, you got to keep those knives just super sharp. Because if you want to be able to do stuff like that, it has to be that way. Okay? Beautiful. So as you see, we've got some lovely things going on here. Now I think for this, I think I want to go with the pepper jack this time. I'm going to be adventurous. I'm going to really reach out there. Back there. That up there. Now, I want my meat patty right on top of that. This big one here, go with him. Now, I love all of these things, but for me, at least, I'm just going to dress it off first with a little bit of onion. I've shaped that onion down pretty thin too, the same way I like to do my tomato. Okay? I think some radicchio would be really pretty on this and very tasty. And a bit of green leaf lettuce. There we go. And that gives me, what the heck, we'll go with the tomato. One fantastic burger. It's a steak burger. It's a burger worth remembering right there. There we go. Well, I sure hope you guys enjoy yours. I'm going to be enjoying mine. Well, now that's a gourmet burger. Okay, very simple, but I tell you what, you're not going to be able to go anywhere and get a burger that's on this caliber. Because nobody makes them. Okay, you're just going to have to do it yourself, okay? Oh my goodness. You know what? This just takes hamburger to a whole different level. It's indescribable. Like having the best bread you've ever had with a bite of steak and all of your vegetables, all at the same time. And the best of it. I'll tell you what, this is the best of all worlds right here, and I'm going to be just going crazy on it. I hope you do too. Thank you. Thank you very much for watching Texas Cooking Today. For those of you who have subscribed, thank you. And if you haven't, please subscribe. And you have a good day. Thank you for watching Texas Cooking Today, the show where you can get great recipes and the best techniques are taught. Please subscribe to Texas Cooking Today, where you will always find something hot and ready to eat.